If we don't understand it, if we don't wake up soon, we are in for the greatest single Holocaust in human history. We've got no friends.
To give you a very brief overview of why we're here, we've put together a documentary specifically to discuss something that's never been talked about before in documentary form, specifically the socioeconomic progress, or lack thereof, of black people in America. And there's no way we could talk about this without talking to the godfather of black economic progress, and that's you. I've got one question that I came 1,500 miles to ask you. The question is, Dr. Anderson, after 150 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, 50 years after civil rights, after the NBA and NFL and rap music and everything else, and Oprah and Barack Obama, sir, why are we the poorest people in the United States?
And now, an exclusive first look at the upcoming documentary, 7 a.m.
We are that age, those children who we were supposed to reap all the benefits of integration. Dr. Anderson, I'm 36 and I'm telling you, I don't see where those benefits were. The generational wealth, the legacy, the institutions, the organizations that white kids have or even Asian kids have. I have never had access to any of those kind of things. There's never been a similar type of structure for me. What happened to our inheritance?
You don't have an inheritance. That's what I meant. If you don't have any wealth, what are you passing on? Look, see, we've spent most of our lives focusing politically on things that are non-inheritable. See, when the civil rights movement started, you talking about your integration years. Is you a product of an integrated generation? What did your generation focus on? You focused on welfare, food stamps, public housing, okay, civil rights, social integration, preferential treatment, getting a job. How do you inherit those things? What is there to inherit? And a typical white person right now, as an example, wealthy, they live off 87% of their income comes from unearned income. They're getting it from unearned income. They're getting it from Wall Street, from the stock markets. They're getting it from rental payments for property owned. They're getting it from trust accounts. They got unearned income coming in. Where is your black unearned income? What's that going to be? Food stamp, welfare, unemployment compensation? Where are you going to get unearned income from? And they keep telling every black generation, integrated generation, that you've inherited something. What have you got to inherit? What black family is passing on in the resources, in the wealth to their children? So that means that. So what I'm saying then is that every white child, at birth, he hits this earth, in his community, in his church, in his family, in his neighborhood, in his school, in his race, with 87% of what he needs to be successful in life. He can reach out, unlike you just said, at any time and touch what he wants. He can go down the street and find banks. He can go find people that's in business. He can get cousins and relatives as professional people. He can touch it anytime he wants to. The average white kid comes in with 87% of what he needs. You as a black person, you come in with zero. You come in with zero. You got to compete against a white child that has 87%. You come in with zero. So what they're going to tell you is that that's okay. You just got to run fast and jump higher. And that's not fair to black children. Black people have to learn that you got to start developing wealth and resources and pass it on to these children so they can be at least competitive, and quit focusing on this waste of time stuff about something that's irrelevant that you can't measure. Oh, I'm leaving my kids some hope. I'm leaving him with a good mind. I'm giving him with the blessing of a family. Now, all that stuff. No, he needs something to compete against that guy that got 87%.
I almost ran for mayor of Washington, D.C. in 2010. And I found that Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, majority African-American city, had the second highest poverty rate in America. almost 40% of every African American citizen in that city was living in poverty. So you look at those statistics and you say, what in the world is going on here? Lack of economic opportunity. So we're where we are today because we have the entrepreneurial spirit has been taken away from us.
You talk about economic development, business opportunities, business growth, small business development. All of those things the African American community still is not seeing the full fruition of.
Our education in America has not provided or prepared us to be able to compete with Europeans economically. So we should not be surprised that we're so economically backward because we were never taught how to be economically forward.
Racism was an economic issue. It's always been an economic issue. It's not a social issue. It's not a political issue. It's an economic issue.
I'm Madam C.J. Walker's great-great-granddaughter. I grew up in the hair care business with both parents working in hair care.
Capitalism means learning how to own and control the land, resources, and businesses, and use other people's labor to enrich yourself.
It was terrible for the Negro Leagues. Integration is terrible for the Negro Leagues.
It's about ownership of assets, and that's where real wealth is created, and that's where real power is created.
And it's not social integration, it's not civil rights that determines your opportunities, your equal opportunities, or your competitiveness. It's what you own and control in terms of vital resources. That's what determines what you're going to get in this world.
We are being faced with economic annihilation, which is why if we don't come together and unify as a people, it's only a matter of time before there might not be too many African Americans left in this country.
The fight today is not for equal rights. It's for equal economic empowerment.
Which end of the stick do y'all want? You want integration, you want segregation? I said, I don't want either end of the stick.
Hello, I'm Jason Black, creator of the documentary 7 a.m. People have asked why I did this documentary. Well, the answer is very simple. We live in a world that runs on money. That's all. But the problem that black people have is that we are the poorest people in the world. And there's a simple reason for that. Because we do not have our own businesses. Now, we've been fed a lie for the last 150 years since we were migrated off of the plantations. The lie that we have been fed is that money doesn't matter, not where we're concerned. Now, for everybody else, money matters, but for black people, there's something more important than money. That's what we've been told. We've been told that we need to focus on education. We need to focus on civil rights. We need to focus on integration or our lack of proper religion. That's what we have been told. But the simple truth is that if you don't own businesses, you're not a producer. In reality, you're not truly a consumer. You're also the one being consumed. You've been bamboozled. So let's talk about what happened to you. First off, you were fed the lie of integration. Integration is a lie because it is a national fraud that encourages us to say to ourselves that the problem with black people is that white people do not like us, and that if we could only get them to like us, we will no longer be poor and they will no longer try to brutalize or victimize us. And this is completely wrong.
The issue should have never been integration. Why would it be integration in the first place? Never been. That was something that was cocked up by the black overclass, as I said in the 1930s, called universality at that time. Then later on, it morphed into being integration. It should never been the issue. Never been the issue. And that's unforgivable for black leadership in this country to allow people to bamboozle them into debating the issue of social integration.
You should instead be focusing on building your own economy. That way, it doesn't matter whether people like you or whether they hate you, they will not be able to harm you. And the goal should be ensuring your survival, not ensuring your popularity. When you have power, wealth, and influence, you are impervious to people's like or dislike of you. Secondly, the problem with integration is that it encouraged us to commit economic suicide. We gave up all of our businesses. We abandoned our own economy. Black people used to have our own economy, but we no longer do because we were so fixated and obsessive chasing white acceptance that we took the Faustian bargain that we needed to abandon our own economy to gain their acceptance. Well, we did that, and it certainly got us more jobs, didn't it? But amazingly enough, our unemployment numbers never moved, and our poverty rate never moved. Gaining integration did not make us a more powerful people. Gaining integration simply made us an integrated people. And that's it. Next up is civil rights. That's the other great lie that we've been sold, is that we needed to gain civil rights. The simple truth is that poor people have no rights. None at all.
And Nick said, well, we got civil rights. You got a civil rights right now to go down to a hotel, to the richest hotel, and go get the most expensive room and have lobster fed to you every day. But if you don't have the money, you cannot do it.
And the spate of attacks on unarmed black men by police has clearly shown you that the police and the prosecutors are making it clear that they don't have to respect your civil rights. They can pass all the civil rights laws they want to. The court system and the police are ignoring those rights because they know that you have no means by which to punish them, because the only way you can punish somebody is economically. And to some of the people out there feeding themselves some of these revolutionary lies, I'll deal with that in a few moments as well. One of the more insidious tactics that's been used against us is the black clergy. This has been particularly difficult because over a century ago, white supremacy, after we migrated off of the plantations, latched on to a strategy. The Constitution of the United States protects your religion. So that was the only place where black people could gather together unmolested. We were protected by law. So white supremacy said, if we cannot attack them from the outside, let's attack them from the inside. They went on a campaign to buy off every single one of our black pastors in America and tell him that he can get acceptance. He can come to City Hall. He can come to the balls. He can show up at all these places and become a prominent black citizen. Prominent defined as accepted even within white circles, accepted in quotations, so long as he only preaches a specific type of gospel and doesn't get off into any talk of black people becoming self-sufficient. As long as you preach to your people pie in the sky and heaven in the hereafter to be happy slaves toiling away at our corporate plantations, then you will remain a good citizen. But if you don't do that, you'll see our dollars going to somebody else. We'll support somebody else's soup kitchen and somebody else's daycare at another church who does decide to play ball. And guess what? Your black clergy, which has been the birthplace of many of your so-called civil rights leaders, they abandoned any talk whatsoever of black people owning our own economy. If you hadn't noticed, your black preachers and pastors on television and making millions of dollars on their books, do you notice that they talk about money all right, but they tell you that the way to get money is to pray for it? They never tell you that you should pray to God to help you to build a business. They tell you pray to God that money will fall from the sky. And absent money magically appearing from the sky, they tell you pray to God for a job from the very people who are oppressing you. You see, that century-old investment that they made into the black clergy has paid off in dividends. So why is it that black people have accepted this? There's two main reasons that are motivating it. Number one, black people are afraid. The simple truth of the matter is that white supremacy broke black people. It broke our will to fight. Like a boxer who realizes he can't beat his opponent, black people are no longer trying to win the game. Black people are no longer even trying to survive. They're just trying to exist at this point, and hoping that today will not be the day that Darren Wilson or Daniel Pantaleo shows up for them. So we teach our children to keep their heads down, to bow down, don't make any waves, and hopefully staying poor and impoverished will prevent you from being a target. We've given up on the idea that our children should have a life worth living. We've simply told them exist. The second reason is because black people have developed a social psychological attachment to the dominant society. Ever since slavery ended, at least on the plantation level, black people have become psychologically fixated on getting white society to say the words. We want them to physically say the words, "You are our equal." And as long as they don't say that, we go through every day feeling like just half a person. And that's why we don't build our own businesses. Because you see, if we had our own economy, we would no longer have to get validation from the dominant society. And we want that validation. Like a spiteful ex-wife who wants to see her husband admit that his life has gone to pot without her. We want to hear white society admit that we really were their equals and that they were really wrong for what they did.
The reason you integrated is because black people, post-traumatic slavery disorder, going back to the antebellum days, have always felt inferior to white people because they conditioned us to believe so. And we couldn't wait to prove to them and to ourselves how equal we were. And so when the opportunity to integrate came, our low racial self-esteem dictated that we vacated what we had and integrate what he had because we had always wanted his acceptance.
No wonder they don't give it to us. Because as long as they don't say that, they keep us chasing that carrot on a stick. And all we keep getting is the stick. Furthermore, validation is something that comes from within. It doesn't come from without. But black people are still waiting for that external validation. And we are the poorest people on the planet. And that brings us to a more deadly phase. Because you see, poor people have to be utilized for a purpose. And once you no longer can be used for that purpose, you are discarded. Because we live in a world that runs on money. And what that means is only the producers, the business owners, those are the essential citizens. Everybody else is a consumer, or worse, getting consumed. And when you are an obsolete workforce, as black people are today, that leaves you the prime candidate to simply be consumed. And the fact that now the court system has officially weighed in, that black blood is without consequences, and the police now have a free pass to execute us on sight without any punishment, and the prosecutors in the courts will back them up. Ladies and gentlemen, we have entered a soft Holocaust. And the reason we're in the middle of that is because we are poor people. Yes, they hate us because we're black, but they're able to victimize us because we're poor. And we've made up every excuse in the world for why we don't have to stand up and fight them. As I said before, we're afraid. So we take a look at Asians and Arabs and say, well, those people have some type of unnatural unity with each other that allows them to stick together. But sticking together is not what has helped them. They came over here with one goal, to build an economy. Because even though white supremacists may not like them, they're unable to harm them because they didn't get their money from white supremacy. They make their own. Lastly, I want to address you. That's right, you, the person listening to me right now. Because of all the atrocities that have been committed, there's one that sticks out more than any other. You see, wealth is generational. Wealth is defined as something that is passed down from one generation to another. Well, poverty is generational too. And black people have made a decision that we don't care if we pass poverty down to our children. It's actually commonplace to hear black parents say, I don't have to leave anything to my children because nobody left anything to me. We've become so spiteful and hateful that we are now the chief tools of sabotage against our own children. We hate our own children to the point that we will deliberately sit and look them in the eyes and say, I'm passing down nothing to you. You will go out into this world and fend for yourself like an orphan just dropped off on these shores. I have money. I have a job. I'm going to spend that on clothes and cars. And you will have to live a hand-to-mouth existence and get by however you get by.
Remember, the old heads, they want to ride all the way home on what they're getting. The old civil rights leaders, they're gonna bust a grape for you all. The rappers that got money, they ain't gonna do anything for you. Who's gonna stand up for you, do anything? Show me one in the country stand up for you.
We have adopted a culture of betrayal and treason against our own children. And the single greatest crime that a people can commit is to pass on a lesser world to their children than the one that they inherited. Today, the dollar is worth 1/20th what it was 80 years ago. And that is the dollar that we are telling our children, you should go out into the world and start at a 1/20th disadvantage to all these other people who have been passing down wealth for a century. We tell our children, go out into the world and start with nothing. Make it on your own. And most of you listening right now, if you're black, most of you are poor. And that was what your parents did to you. They betrayed you. They gave you nothing and sent you out into the world. We are having children without a purpose, because if you're not passing anything down, then what are you getting children for, other than to reproduce? We need power, and power in this world is gained one way, through your dollars. There are some people out there who have this fantasy, and black people are very good for resorting to make-believe. They have this fantasy that we can shoot our way out of this, so they get on the internet and pose with guns. Here's the problem with that type of idiocy. How are you gonna go to war when you don't even make your own bullets? I'd like to call you now to come and see it. Opening January 17th and January 22nd in select cities around the country. I would like to invite you to come and see 7 a.m. Not so we can have a pity party. That's not what the documentary talks about, and that's not what it discusses. Not so we can sit up and talk about the problems, but so that we can finally address what is the solution. It is not your lack of proper religion. It's not your willingness to integrate. Brothers and sisters, it's about business. Come to our website, 7ammovie.com. That's 7ammovie.com. If you're black and broke, it's time to wake up.